Good morning. Thank you all for being here, and I'll just get right to the point. Donald Trump is still the single greatest threat to our democracy. It was true yesterday, and it's true even more, especially after this ruling right now. We don't need 9 Supreme Court justices to tell me that Donald Trump was responsible for January 6th. I was there. Those people that attacked us, they attacked us in his name, on his orders. I was there when Donald Trump encouraged a mob of supporters to march on the Capitol to try to overturn the results of a free and fair election. I remember it clearly. While they were beating officers with flags, while they were there, they said they were there to stop the steal. When we told them to leave, they said the president told us to come. Trump's deranged, self-centered, obsessive quest for power is the reason violent insurrectionists assaulted me and my brave colleagues and killed Brian Sicknick. Officer Sicknick's father, Charles, said it best: Trump is the reason my son is dead. Trump does whatever will get him votes and helps only Donald Trump. Donald Trump has had every opportunity to extend condolences to the Sicknick family and officers of January 6th, but instead, he's doubled down on his disgusting, self-serving lies. Even on the debate, he said that officers were ushering those rioters in, and he refers to them as patriots. He promises to pardon them if he's elected. At his rallies, he plays a perverted version of our national anthem to honor the rioters. He refused 3 times at the debate to say if he would accept the results of the 2024 election. And that's what caused January 6th. That's what planted the seeds for it to happen. And he's doing it again now, saying that he will only accept it if he wants to. Trump has said there will be a bloodbath if he loses again. Well, I know what a bloodbath looks like because I saw one on January 6th. Here's the truth. I fear it will be worse if he regains power. Donald Trump has clearly snapped, and he's out for revenge. The stakes of this election have never been higher. This election is about a choice between Joe Biden, who ran for office to protect our democracy after he saw the mob at Charlottesville, and Donald Trump, who called those rioters very fine people. My message today is simple. This is not a drill. Donald Trump is the single greatest threat to the United States of America in a generation. We can't let him anywhere in the Oval Office again. We can't count on the Supreme Court or any institution to hold him responsible. It's going to be up to the voters in November, and I look forward to helping elect Joe Biden as president. And with that, I turn it over to my friend, Representative Dan Goldman.
Thanks very much, Officer Dunn. You put it so well and in such stark terms. And today's decision by the conflicted and compromised Supreme Court has set back our democracy dramatically. And it allows for someone like Donald Trump to conspire with others while utilizing ostensibly official acts of as a president to conspire to overturn an election. And the breadth of this opinion, I think we're just starting to get a handle on. But it essentially says that if there's any plausible official explanation for anything that a president does, that it effectively is not only immune from being used as an act in furtherance of a crime, but it's prevented from being used as evidence of a crime. It is a sweeping and devastating opinion for our separation of powers and for our fundamental belief and notion that no one is above the law. The implication of it is significant. There will certainly not be a trial in that case before the election. And Donald Trump is given license to do the same thing that he did before. And that he will view this as his continuing quest for the presidency as a personal get-out-of-jail-free card. Officer Dunn put it very well, which is something I found when I led the first impeachment investigation into Donald Trump way back in 2019. Donald Trump is out for Donald Trump and Donald Trump alone. He does not care about this country. He does not care about the American people. He cares solely about himself. And I think his attorneys put it exactly as it remains today in the Senate trial in January of 2020, which is that what Donald Trump believes is in his personal interest is in the country's interest. And that is an incredibly dangerous approach. And we saw that he has just become more and more unhinged, vengeful, retributive, and self-centered as the years have passed, most recently in the debate, when he blatantly lied about what happened on January 6th. He denied he had any role in fomenting and inciting a mob that invaded the Capitol. He refused to say that he would accept the results of the next election. And he demonstrated that, and he admitted that he will be on a retribution tour, and would potentially would be very willing to criminally charge his political enemies. The danger of a Trump presidency, a second Trump presidency, cannot be underscored. And I would take it a step further than Officer Dunn. It's not just the biggest threat in a generation. It is far and away the biggest threat since the Civil War. If Joe Biden is not elected in November, we will not have a democracy that we have known for 250 years. And with that, let me turn it over to my friend and colleague, Representative Jasmine Crockett.
Sorry, man, this mute button. Thank you so much, Dan. Today is a rough day for me. I feel as if every day that I wake up and, people assume and feel empowered when they're sitting in one of the most powerful bodies in the world, serving as a member of Congress. But every day I feel as if I'm literally scratching my head wondering how powerless I am. And this court continues to show us that they are going to strip any and all powers away. So I would say good morning to y'all, but instead I'm going to just say hello because I don't know if it's a good morning. Obviously, this Supreme Court decision is devastating. But at the end of the day, today's Supreme Court decision is just one example in a long, long line of them that underscores the high stakes of this election. I think the entire election can be summarized by one single word. That word is freedom. When I say this election is about freedom, you can look at it in a couple of ways. For one candidate, it's about freedom from jail. But for the rest of us who care about this country, when we say this election is about freedom, we're talking about reproductive freedom, freedom to access the ballot box, freedom to love who you want, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom to live the life you want to live. And today's Supreme Court decision certainly didn't change those stakes. In fact, if anything, if they did change the stakes, they only made them higher. Because right now, all of our freedoms are under attack by the man who's running for president for freedom from jail and running on a promise to enact revenge on anyone who opposes him. We can't underestimate Donald Trump's threat or his dark vision for our future. I know because I've experienced it firsthand. As a criminal defense attorney and civil rights lawyer, I have never been arrested a day in my life. I've never had a warrant out for my arrest either. But once I became an elected official in the state house, think about this. I was an elected official who was carrying out what I considered to be my official duties as a member of the Texas State House. and another MAGA Republican Governor Greg Abbott absolutely ordered that the Speaker of the House at the time, Speaker Dade Phelan, put a warrant out for my arrest simply because I would not sit idly by as they sought to turn back voting rights in the state of Texas. And ultimately, that action that I took did two things. Number one, it lessened a terrible bill. Number two, it somehow propelled me to actually become a U.S. Congresswoman. Now think about this. If they tried to use their power, their official power, to silence me before this court opinion, imagine what is going to happen in this country now. So Donald Trump's threats to abuse his power and destroy our democracy are not hypothetical. It is already happening. And if he returns to the Oval Office, there's no doubt in my mind that he will make his dark vision a reality for everyone, everywhere. But we are not powerless. We don't have to sit idly by as Donald Trump comes after our freedoms. We don't have to hope and pray for a legal system to work the way it was intended to. And we certainly don't have to let partisan politics get in the way of protecting our democracy. We can come together and elect Joe Biden, a man who has always and always will stand up for our rights, our freedoms, and the very foundation of our great country, American democracy. With that, I am going to turn it over to Quentin Folks.
Thank you, Rep. Crockett, and thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Officer Dunn, Rep. Crockett again, and Representative Goldman for detailing the catastrophic threat that Trump poses to our future. Look, today's ruling doesn't change the fact the American people saw with their own eyes what happened on January 6, 2021. Trump was desperate and unstable, and he encouraged the mob to try to violently overthrow the election that he knew that he lost. Some of the folks on this call today were in the building when he did so. Since that fateful day, Trump has only grown more unhinged. And now he's unchecked thanks to this ruling today by the Supreme Court. Trump's affection for political violence has only grown. He's promising to rule as a dictator. He's been saying it for months. Our campaign has been pointing it out for months. He's talking about bloodshed if he loses. Project 2025 makes it clear that he has a coordinated plan to replace civil servants with loyalists to him and only him to weaponize the Justice Department against its own citizens. We've seen him do it before and then stand up with a Bible. And in reading today's opinion, if those things were being considered, quote, official acts, Donald Trump could legally do that. Let me put a finer point on this. This decision will give Donald Trump cover to do exactly what he's been saying that he wants to do for months, which is enact revenge and retribution against his political enemies. According to this decision, if it's an official act to ask his Justice Department to jail his political opponents, he's immune. If it's an official act to have his Homeland Security Department round up Latinos in detention camps and deport them for no reason, he'd be immune for that. If it's an official act to have his vice president overturn the fair and free results of an election, he's immune to that. Don't take it from me. Let me read part of Justice Sotomayor's dissenting opinion. Orders the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for pardon? Immune. Immune, immune, immune. They just handed Donald Trump the keys to a dictatorship. The Supreme Court just gave Trump a permission slip to assassinate and jail whoever he wants to gain power. Let me stop there for a second. Folks, this is a pivotal moment for our country. The conservative justices on the court, 3 of whom are only there because Donald Trump just made it easier for him to pursue a path to a dictatorship. And there's no dispute over who Donald Trump is. He is a convicted felon who encourages violence, who wants to throw out the Constitution, who wants to be a dictator, and wants to use his office for revenge and retribution. We know that the majority of American people do not want Trump to be a dictator. They do not want the president of the United States to have unchecked power. The more Americans heard from Donald Trump on the debate stage, the more they remembered just how much they disliked him. In particular, according to our internal dials that we were doing during the debate, they responded very negatively when Trump defended January 6th and refused to answer whether he would respect the outcome of the election. He was asked 3 times, and 3 times he refused to answer, every single time, because this is exactly what he wants. It's simple. Voters do not want a power-hungry, wannabe autocrat at the helm of our government. So Team Biden-Harris is going to attack and hold him responsible. You all just heard from Officer Dunn, Representative Crockett and Goldman lay out the stakes. Now from until November, we're going to continue taking this case directly to voters who are going to decide this election. Here's what we're going to do right now, and with more to come. Our ad featuring Sheriff Chris Swanson from Genesee County, Michigan, highlights the threat that Trump poses to democracy itself. This ad has been running across the battlegrounds, including on national cable news, surrounding recent debate coverage, networks that over-index for a younger, more diverse audience. In other words, they're the Biden-Harris key target voters, and during sports programs and other large viewership moments. This morning, we also put out a new ad, I Know, that highlighted Trump's lies about January 6th at the debate. We're spreading out across all the battleground states, hosting events like the ones that we have with Rep. Crockett, headlined in Philadelphia, and Officer Dunn, who spoke in Atlanta this last week, driving home the stakes of the election in our democracy. And we're organizing and mobilizing our volunteer networks because Americans understand the threat that Donald Trump poses to democracy, and they're ready to take action. And this decision by the Supreme Court today is going to spur that even more. Last week alone, Team Biden-Harris hosted 1,500 organizing events across battlegrounds. Let me end by quoting Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who I will point out, by the way, is only on the court because Joe Biden put her there, who wrote a dissenting opinion today. She said, the majority of my colleagues seem to have put their trust in the court's ability to prevent presidents from becoming kings. I fear they are wrong. I fear they are wrong. We're talking about the Supreme Court handing the keys to a president to do whatever he wants with no responsibility or accountability. But here's the thing. We don't have to just fear that the court justices are wrong. We can do something about it. The next 4 months, we're going to continue to remind people and underscore how dangerous Donald Trump would be in power, which became even more dangerous today. For the next 4 months, we'll continue to remind the American people that Trump is a fundamental threat to our democracy, and that's why they voted him out in 2020, and that's why they're going to turn out and vote to re-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris this November. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lauren, and we'll be happy to take some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Button, and thank you to all our speakers. We are now happy to take questions. If you would like to ask one, please go ahead and use the feature to raise your hand. All right, first question will be Tamara Keith at NPR.
Thank you so much. I am wondering if this might result in sort of the tone that you're taking here. Is President Biden going to be, or the campaign, running against the Supreme Court, or at least running on the Supreme Court as an issue more now, particularly following the debate performance in terms of setting up contrast?
Thank you for the question. This is Quentin. Look, I think that today's ruling underscores the stakes of democracy. And I think if anything, it can be used as an amplifier, and the American people will see it as an amplifier to justify what we've been saying, which is that the fact that Donald Trump wants to be a dictator. He wants unchecked power. He put justices on the court who ripped away freedoms from Americans and then gave him the freedom to do whatever he wants today. And I find that very ironic. The other thing that I want to point out is that not only does Donald Trump know this, he's actively celebrating. On Twitter right now, or X, he is honestly celebrating because he knows that this is what he wants. And so I think our campaign is going to continue to make the case that the stakes of this election cannot be higher. And honestly, because of this opinion from the Supreme Court today, it just puts a finer point on the fact that if Donald Trump gets anywhere near the Oval Office again, he will rule as a dictator. He will use his power to harm his political enemies. He will continue to incite political violence. And that is something that we cannot afford. And he will only take our country back.
Thank you so much. Did any of our other speakers have anything they wanted to add? All right, we will go ahead and move on to our next question. And that'll be Tony Christopher.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear
Hello?
you.
Can you hear me?
Hey, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Sorry. Hi. Yes. So, yeah, regarding this decision, Justice Sotomayor's dissent was really sort of scary. And she's saying that this gives him immunity for assassinating people. What do each of you envision Trump would do with this new immunity power in a second term? And what is your strategy going forward to capitalize, well, not capitalize on the ruling, to address the ruling?
Well, this is, and the other speakers should weigh in here, but this is Quentin. Look, I do think that it was extremely scary. And what we think Trump will do with this untethered political power is everything that he's been saying at his rallies. I mean, if you listen to him, his own niece was at the debate and said, you should believe him. He is the biggest threat that we have. Look, we honestly think that Donald Trump is going to do this. He is talking about jailing his political opponents. He is talking about being a dictator. He is talking about continuing to double down and rip away freedoms. He's talking about overturning elections. So what happens if there's an election outcome result that Trump doesn't like in a Senate race or a governor's race or a House race? Those are the type of things that we think Trump is going to do. Honestly, there is no precedent for this. The Supreme Court just handed Donald Trump free keys to absolute immunity as president of the United States. And so we're going to continue to point out to voters that when Trump says these things, now he will have the ability to do them if he is the president or reelected president of the United States. And we have to do everything in our power to stop him.
I'll just add, this is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. You know, if any of you have ever covered me, you know that being silent is really not what I do. I am actually very shook. And I hate the fear-mongering that the Republicans consistently do all the time. They want people to be afraid of trans kids. They want people to be afraid of Black folk. They want people to be afraid of immigrants. They have this game plan that they always play out that is always one of fear. And I always want us to be hopeful on our side. But I am going to be honest. The fear-mongering is about to begin, at least from my perspective. And not because it's a matter of making people scared for no reason, like trying to scare them about the diversity that exists within who I am, but scaring them because they literally are allowing him the ability to kill someone. When Sotomayor put that into her decision, she wasn't just saying this. This was argued by his attorneys. So this is not hypothetical for me. This is a very real thing. It's a very real and scary thing for me. And I hate to not focus on a more hopeful future that the Biden-Harris team wants to bring, one that talks about making sure that you can move into a home because we understand that the interest rates are high, but they want to offer a stimulus for that. Understanding that the cost of childcare is high. So they want to make sure that with the Democratic House and Senate, they can go ahead and get that child tax credit back. But instead, I've got to focus on the fact that, number one, we have seen a consolidation of power under Trump from this Supreme Court because essentially the courts are not separated. We used to have checks and balances. I am not feeling that right now. From Judge Eileen Cannon to the Supreme Court, they seemingly are operating just in service to him, which is what Project 2025 talks about. Then when we look at our congressional house that is run by the Republicans that refuse to do anything on immigration policy because he said so, again, consolidation of power. The only thing that's left to do is to install him into the White House. And so for me, I've got to be real and I got to be honest with people and let them.
Okay, I think we lost Congressman Crockett there, but thank you so much for those powerful remarks. We'll go ahead and move on to the next question from Ron Brownstein.
Yeah, I guess I'm interested in kind of the role of the president in this response. I mean, it's one thing to hear from members of the House and campaign officials, but after that debate last week, there were a lot of Democrats who said the best way to deal with the fallout would be for him to be holding town halls, for him to be doing interviews. Do you expect his level of public activity to change as a result both of this decision and that debate? Are you going to put him in circumstances that allow him to show, as you call it, that was simply, quote, a bad night, unquote?
Well, thank you for the question. Look, first of all, I'll say that the president himself acknowledged that he did not have a good night. You see in our ad where, we acknowledge that when you get knocked down, you get back up. I don't have many travel announcements to make on this call. I can tell you that we are in campaign season, and the president is going to continue to hit the battleground states and campaign as he has been campaigning for months. But I also want to make sure that we don't lose sight of what we are here today talking about. And again, respect the premise of your question, and I hear it. But we're on this call right now talking about the fact that the Supreme Court just honestly created new precedent and set a pathway for somebody who is desperate to stay in power to do that and do it to an extreme degree. And so my answer is not a deflection around the president's performance of the debate. My answer is a reality check, and I mean that in the most sincere way possible, in what we are actually talking about here, because as Rep. Crockett just said, and I concur, to use legal terms and stay in the Supreme Court, is that I'm scared of shit. And I think Americans are scared and should be scared of what Donald Trump will do, because he has been telling us for months. And so I can reassure you that when you do see President Biden out on the trail, he will be talking about the reasons why Americans should be scared of Donald Trump, as he has been for months. And this Supreme Court opinion today just amplified that.
Officer Dunn here. And to go back to the fear-mongering thing, it's not fear-mongering. Everybody remembers and knows vividly what they saw on January 6th. We know what we went through. It's not fear-mongering to say now, hey, what Donald Trump did was legal. That's not fear-mongering. We went through what we went through on January 6th. And now the Supreme Court saying, as long as it's within his official capacity, that's okay. That's not fear-mongering. That's telling the truth. And if the truth makes people fear, then you know what? It is what it is. And you need to vote with that in mind. And there's only one way that we can assure that what happened on January 6th doesn't happen again, and that's by voting for Joe Biden.
Great. Thank you so much, Officer Dunn. Our last question will be from Tessa at Rolling Stone.
Hey there. So my question is about, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. My question is about court reform and whether you anticipate the president will be recalibrating his position on court reform, whether he's considering expanding the court or some of these other options that have been floated in the past. I'm just wondering, for voters who are being asked to support a second term, what are the possibilities? I mean, we've seen the majority of decisions that came out this term, 6-3 decisions, a very partisan court. And I'm wondering, for voters who are looking at this and feeling like it's broken, and what is the president going to do about it if he's given a second term? I'm wondering what the campaign is saying to them.
Look, I don't have any news to share on that this morning. What I can say is that we know that the president, one, deeply respects our institutions of government. Two, for the voters that care about it and care about these rulings and how they're shaking out, pointing out, look at who Trump has put on the court. Look at the rulings that they have handed down. Look at the rights that they have taken away, with reproductive freedom being chief among them. Affirmative action that falls through the cracks. Look at what this court, because of Donald Trump, have dismantled and taken away from American citizens. And you want to talk about politicizing the court and, talking about those things. Look at Donald Trump. For months, he's gone out and does what he does continuously. Lied about his own legal troubles, saying that they are somehow politicized. But the funny thing is that the Supreme Court just handed him the keys today to be able to do the exact same things to his political opponents should he be reelected. And so we're going to continue to make the case and talk to voters about the fact that the judges that Donald Trump put on the court have honestly taken away rights from American and given more freedom to Donald Trump as president of the United States to do whatever he wants. And on the flip side of that, if we're talking about a comparison and how two individuals see the justice system and the judicial system, look at the justices that Joe Biden has put on the courts. Over 200 federal judges. Ketanji Brown Jackson. Like, look at where these candidates are putting their values and their morals. And look at how the justices that they're putting on the court are ruling in these cases that are undermining American democracy as the one that we see today and American freedoms with things like Roe. Those aren't Biden-appointed judges that are doing that, even in the lower courts. Those are Trump-appointed appointees on the Supreme Court and the lower courts who are hell-bent on continuing to rip away Americans' freedoms and giving Donald Trump unchecked federal political power. And this campaign is going to spend every day from now until November continuing to make that case that if Donald Trump gets anywhere near the White House again, he will do exactly what he has been telling us for months. He will continue to rip away fundamental freedoms from Americans, and he will continue to pursue political violence while attempting to rule as a dictator.
And if I could just add, Clinton, one additional thing, it goes a step further. Donald Trump has certainly enumerated his desire to be a dictator, his authoritarian desire to take over our government. And what the Supreme Court has just done today is given him license to do that. They have paved the way for him to do that. Public corruption laws no longer apply to the president. He can take a bribe in order and then pardon someone, because that's an official act. And Justice Sotomayor pointed that out. He can. He's already taken $8 million as president in violation of the Emoluments Clause. He's already offered oil executives deregulation if they give him $1 billion. These things are, on the fence in terms of criminal conduct, but now he has absolute immunity to commit corruption or other crimes while he is a president, which is a license to be a dictator. And the really most egregious part of this ruling that has absolutely zero basis in any kind of law is the notion that official acts not only can't be charged criminal conduct, but for some unknown reason, the Supreme Court decided that they can't be used as evidence of criminal conduct for unofficial acts. And you'll note that Justice Barrett didn't agree with that part of this ruling. That part of this ruling makes this immunity opinion so sweeping as to be almost impossible to charge anyone for any conduct while they are president. And notably, the two deciding votes on that aspect of this opinion are Justices Thomas and Alito, both of whom are required by law, by the Constitution, and by their own Supreme Court precedent to have recused themselves from this case because Justice Thomas's wife was involved in the underlying conduct and may have some degree of criminal exposure herself. And Justice Alito made a politically biased statement in support of Donald Trump's effort to overturn the election. Those are quintessential reasons that they are required by federal law, 28 U.S.C. 455, to recuse, and they did not. And now they have made the deciding votes to give the President of the United States complete carte blanche to commit any crime that he or she wants to. And it eviscerates the concept that no person is above the law. That is no longer the case in this country.
I'm just going to add really quickly, and I won't pretend to speak on behalf of the president. This is Congresswoman Crockett, that we did actually pull together a court reform task force. So there's a number of us that are running in the House, and we are running on reforms. That court reform task force is myself, Jamie Raskin, it is Madeline Dean, It is also it's Hank Johnson as well as Adam Schiff, and there's 3 bills that we already have that we're pushing for. Number one bill is to expand the court. Another bill is to actually institute term limits, which those term limits would be 18 years. And the final portion of that, the other bill, is actually on ethics reform. We obviously know that this court has been bought. We've seen the numbers. We know what's going on. It's one of the reasons that we don't trust a lot of the opinions that are coming out of this court. But we are running and telling people that if we get the House, these are bills that we are going to try to push forward with. Now, obviously, we still need a Democratic Senate that is willing to go along with us. And I can guarantee you that if Trump is elected, he will never sign these into law. If Joe Biden is elected, we can at least sit down, have conversations, and talk about why it's important to institute these court reforms. But the House, we are already on top of this. This was before this decision. We recognize the need is not now, it was yesterday, to institute these court reforms and protect an institution that we honestly assumed and presumed would always just be this upstanding ethical institution. But it is clear that it is anything but now.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Crockett. Thank you, Officer Dunn. Thank you, Congressman Goldman. And thank you to all of our reporters who joined today. This call has now ended. The embargo has lifted. Thank you so much to everyone who respected the embargo. And you know how to reach us. Thanks. Bye.